Star Citizen Live offers a really fun opportunity to listen to the devs just kind of talk about the game, and a lot of times we get some pretty good information out of it. So today, we're going to watch the devs talk a little bit about some of the features that are coming up, missions, vehicle gameplay specifically is the team, and hopefully they're going to give us some good information.
Joining us on the show this week are a few esteemed members from the various gameplay feature teams throughout Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development that work on features related to the spaceships and vehicles. It's always hard. We used to just say ships, and then we started making more ground vehicles, and I'm like, no, you got to call it vehicles now, not just spaceships. Spaceships just dismiss all the great work of ground vehicles. And now
that's something they do in the monthly reports, and I'm still not quite sure if when they say vehicles, they could still mean ships, but sometimes they say ships. So do they just mean vehicles when they say vehicles? I don't know, because sometimes there have been some confusing ones, and they catch me off guard.
Before we get started, I wanted to call out a couple things for folks who were questioning some of the questions and some of the discussion from last week's show and stuff. A lot of the questions that are submitted into our threads when we pull questions are things that obviously people want to see, people want to know about, people are anxiously waiting for. It doesn't mean they're actually in active development. If a thing is not in what we call active development, which is where a person is literally, like, their tasks this week are to work on a thing, there's usually...
Everything is always in active development. It's how it must be.
No new information to give. Folks who have followed the project for any long period of time will tell you that in the earlier days when we were still all figuring out what Star Citizen was and figuring out what weekly content was and stuff, we were sometimes quite vociferous and loquacious with our verbiage, and now I'm just reading it from the source. Basically, we would just talk pie in the sky. Maybe we'll do this, and maybe we'll do this and stuff. And sometimes it can set expectations that are unfair to set in people. So over the last few years, you've probably noticed that we hold things a little closer to our vest. If a thing is not in active development, we try not to talk about it too much, because there's just too much about game development that can change between now and the moment when we actually start to work on it.
This is what has slowed me down on my speculation videos. And I have mixed feelings about it. I like not doing speculation videos. I like making videos about stuff that's closer to release. But also, I want to talk about long distance probing and the Aaron Halo belt and bounty hunting and hacking and cool stuff like that, you know? But woe is me.
Reason I'm sure you've noticed in our storytelling, ISC, SCL, that we tend to talk more about things that are coming in the next 3 to 6 months as opposed to things that are coming in the next year to 2 years and stuff like this. So in the question thread, there were a lot of questions like, what about personal VIP transport and stuff like this, which is not currently in active development? Or what about medical gameplay, which is, while it does involve vehicles to a certain extent, is far more an FPS related feature than it is a spaceship feature. We're going to focus the show, as we always try to do, on the stuff that is currently in active development and the features that...
This is them successfully stopping digging themselves in holes, because we've been doing this for years, and for years they've had Calling All Devs, and they've had... God, I don't even remember what they used to call it anymore. Calling All Devs, Around the Verse, Bug Smashers. What the heck was their Friday shows called besides Calling All Devs? I can't remember. But we've been doing this whole back and forth with the devs for a long time. And we would constantly give them questions of things that they hadn't reversed the verse. Thank you so much. We had constantly given them questions of things that they didn't know about, but we would want answers. So they would give us answers, and then those answers would change over time, and then it would cause trouble. Happy to be part of that trouble and drag up all those old references. I'll keep them coming. But it's just another thing like the roadmap change we got a couple years ago. They kept giving us a 4-quarter roadmap because we wanted to see what was going on, but then they couldn't meet the 4-quarter roadmap because things would change. So then that would cause problems. So they just got rid of the 4 quarters and went to 1 quarter. Do I like it? No, but it helps them be a lot more accurate and at least, save face and not have to delay features constantly off the roadmap. They're doing the same thing here with these shows. They're not answering stuff that's as far out anymore because, whether you like it or not, it's less about the openness of the entire game and more just about the openness of the current development, which is like our Inside Star Citizen stuff and whatever's coming up in the next couple patches. That's how I take what he's saying. There might be more or less to it, but that's what I'm getting.
That folks are aware of and can play with right now, things like salvaging and mining and combat and stuff like that. A good example of this, there was a question about bounty hunting V2. For instance, there's a big question was voted up about how's bounty hunting V2 running along. Bounty hunting V2 is actually not currently in active development. It's been backburned a bit because we've determined that there are other prerequisite features that are necessary.
I think I know what my future watch will be about next week. Bounty hunting V2 that's an interesting one. I wonder why it's not in development.
It's been backburned a bit because we've determined that there are other prerequisite features that are necessary.
Virtual AI. The NPCs needed. They need to be able to have NPCs active in cities and space stations for that kind of thing. They also need to have the security systems working. They need to have restraints work. They need to have the bounty hunting system working. You'd have to be able to disable ships more easily without blowing them up and then boarding them. Yeah, bounty hunting as they've envisioned it with the virtual AI system would be really hard to do. But I think that's why we were so excited for it, because we were like, oh wow, that's a lot of progress. I'm glad that we're at least hearing about it.
It's been backburned a bit because we've determined that there are other prerequisite features that are necessary to make it work. Things like a restraint system, quantum tracking, the ability to track people through quantum travel, FPS and ship scanning, we all know that needs additional work, and basically the law and security refactor. So when those things come online and those things are developed, then the eye of development Sauron will turn back to bounty hunting V2. So like this. So just a great example of how sometimes a thing is in active development, sometimes it becomes not in active development. And just a little bit of me at the top of the show wanting to discuss why we sometimes ask certain questions and why sometimes we don't ask certain questions. If we're not asking it and we're not talking about it, you can generally assume that it's not something that's currently in active development. And we'll get to those topics when we get closer to
the frustrating reality of Star Citizen. Every time you're feeling that momentum, things are going, you're feeling good, you remember that there are other parts of the game that there's nothing going on with, and then you get reminded of those parts of the game and you're like, oh, we got some ways to go. It gets you. It sneaks up on you like that.
Just a little bit for me. All right, so with that, let's start the show proper. We have four beautiful people, some of my favorite people, and Elliot Maltby joining us on the show this week. So let's get to meeting them. Sorry, I just had to. Elliot, I'm sorry, you took the hit there, so we're going to start with you. Elliot, hi, say hi. Tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
Hello, I'm Elliot Maltby, and I am the lead mission designer on the mission design team. So I make all those missions that work perfectly for all of you.
And at no point do you sit in a corner during Beacon Belgium and just scroll through teams finding out what this mission is broken, that mission is broken in.
I don't get a rest. Just everyone constantly, hey, your mission's broken. It's like, yep, I built it. I know it's broken. I do it on purpose.
Yep. Yogi, tell everybody who you are, what you do for Star Citizen. Unmute yourself, tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
I was muted, yeah. Hello. My name is Yogi. I'm a principal vehicle programmer, and I deal mostly with space combat and the flight experience. I'm somewhat of a link between Richard and Torsten. And yeah, that's what I do. So I do coding and designy things, handle stuff like general flight model development, ESP, and stuff like that. So all these complaints when something is broken usually also go to me. Not mission related though.
Fair enough. I like that. The link between Richard and Thorsten. So let's go to Richard. Rich, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Yes, I'm basically Richard Towler, and I'm the lead designer on the vehicle experience side. So it's balance, it's gameplay with vehicles, and basically working with Yogi and anyone else involved with the kind of general vehicle experience to make the vehicle gameplay good in Star Citizen.
And last but certainly not least, Torsten, tell everybody who you are, what you do for Star Citizen.
Hello, I'm Torsten. I'm lead systems designer and I complain a lot.
That is true.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. And of course, as you've seen, all of our major designers and programmers live in the void, and we're so glad that you can join us from the void this week to take questions. Just two top shelf questions before we get into
that's a good panel. You can actually get some pretty good info from that.
Yogi and Rich, master modes is finally this big thing. You work on a lot. of
jumping straight into it.
This enormous project of yours is finally out in the wild with 323. How's that been? How's that going? How's that make you feel? Are you done? Are we walking away from it? Is this the last thing, or what happened here? How happy are we?
Well, so I posted about my feelings concerning master mods about a couple of weeks ago in Spectrum. So in general, I'm very happy with the progress and what we achieved, because the swapping to the master mode check meant that we had to update all the ships all in one bulk. So we could not really stretch this out to multiple releases, because our data system is not able to have like two different tuning values or two different ways of keeping tuning ships balanced at the same time. So we had to squish all the ships, and just to be clear, we have about 140 different ship records in the game. So we had to update them all and take the other related tech from Squadron, like the new aiming system, the ways how the weapons work, the gimbaling system, and so on, plus part of the UI updates, and squish this all into 323. Now we knew we knew before that this was like a pretty tough ask to do, because it's just a lot of work. So overall, I'm really happy with the progress. Of course, there's a couple of let's say, balance issues. There's a couple of balance offenders, of course, right? But it was kind of like, there's no, we don't need to, we don't need to say it's perfect. Like we never said it's going to be perfect on this release, right? But it builds a far better foundation from which we can iterate faster going forward. So beyond 323.
What about you, Rich?
Yeah, and that's basically where we're at. You know, it's about moving towards
I gotta say,
foundation for the future of the game.
I'm gonna be so happy to move on from master modes. God, it's like a plague at this point. Almost every single piece of content that I make now gets comments about master modes, and they're not coming up at all. I have nothing to say about it. There's a video about like animals off in the tundra doing their thing, and somebody comes in and they're like, "Yeah, but I can't fly anymore." Like, oh my God, please leave me alone. Like I empathize with people that things change in this game, but it's like constantly going on about it in places where people aren't talking about it only makes people not want to talk about it more. So just consider that when putting down your frustrations to people who have nothing to do with the development of the game.
So it's been really cool to get here, but for us it's just the start of this, but it's been a really cool journey. I mean, this journey started for us, like 3 years ago, Yogi, I think it was, it's about 3 years ago, maybe more than that now.
4 years.
Yeah.
I lost track of time, really.
You know, so we got together and you know, we looked at Star Citizen and we went, right, what do we need to do, you know, to make the combat experience good, but also the general flight experience good. And we came with lots of things, and Master Modes was kind of one of the ones that evolved kind of as the prominent feature that we were working on. And it's involved so many teams and so much feedback from, you know, all across the studio. So it's been an effort, you know, not just myself and Yogi, but lots of different teams, you know,
I just want to say, because they are talking about how this is something that came up 3 years ago. Okay, you didn't have to do that website. They're talking about how this is something that came up 3 years ago as a way to help with the gameplay. And we went over this in the episode of Launch Sequence. Yogi was actually on my podcast a couple of months ago. It's a good episode. He talks a lot, I think, pretty candidly about the Master Mode system and how it developed. And if you go back a few years, geez, what was it? 312 or something, maybe 13. It's around here somewhere. Yeah, I think it was one of these. I'm getting close. I'm getting close. I can hear it. No, I'm past it. It's back here somewhere. I might have actually gone too far already. 311? 310? Here we are. Here we go. So this was like one of the biggest efforts they put into making this happen before Master Modes ever became a thing. This is in 2020. So what did they say? It was about 3 years ago that they started working on this?
So we got together and we looked at Star Citizen and we went, right, what do we need to do, to make the combat experience good, but also the general flight experience good. And we came with lots of things, and Mastermodes was kind of one of the ones that evolved kind of as the prominent feature that we were working on. And it's involved so many teams and so much feedback from all across the studio. So it's been an effort, not just myself.
Issues. There's a couple of balance offenders, of course. I don't need to say it's perfect. Like we iterate faster going.
Yeah, and that's basically where we're at. It's about moving towards the better foundation for the future of the game. So it's been really cool to get here. But for us, it's just the start of this. But it's been a really cool journey. I mean, this journey started for us, like 3 years ago, I think. It was about 3 years ago. Maybe.
So like 3 years ago, would line up with about a year, 6 months maybe after August 5th, 2020, this drops in the game. They tried to make this happen. It did not, it didn't change much. People were still flying the same speeds. We all just kind of, what the idea here was, I'll just read it verbatim. Ship systems will suffer the strains of traveling at high speed with maximum velocity, resulting in the restriction of some player options in the cockpit, creating a vulnerability that will push players into engagement at low speeds. It'd make your guns less accurate, missiles wouldn't be locking on, stuff like that. Nobody cared. Everybody just kind of flew through it and figured out how to fight with this system hindering them. So it sounds like within a year, they were onto a system that would basically artificially force it because the game systems weren't doing it in time. And that is unfortunately part of, I think, what a lot of people joined Star Citizen to avoid. The idea of, hey, we need a system that works. We can do this the hard way, that'll take a lot of time, or we can do this the easy way that might need to force through a system. And I think that's what Master Modes does. Like it or hate it, that's what it does. It makes this system work when the in-game systems couldn't do it. Some people want the game released. We'll see how it pans out. We will see.
And of course, we'll have more questions about Master Modes when we get to the combat section of today's Q&A. Before we jump into it, Torsten, Yogi and Rich just had their big big child pushed out in the world. You're up next with engineering in 4.0. How you feeling about your work?
Pretty excited, to be honest. So we, with all the work that we now are starting to put in, and next week we will reach a big milestone where we will just force everyone to use Resource Network in our game dev branch. So will be
Nice.
Quite exciting times going forward.
Oh my gosh.
So
that means like everything going forward will be developed with that in mind. Yes, it probably should be already, but at least now it's a guarantee because they're all forced to use it. Can't wait for engineering missions. I wonder how those are going to be.
Of course, we'll have some more questions about engineering later on the show. Let's jump into the backer questions. We've separated the questions into a couple different sections for a couple different gameplay features and stuff. We're going to start with an oldie, refueling. Refueling and rearming. We'll combine the two there. This question from the community simply says, how is rearming out in the field supposed to work? If we land our fighter in a Polaris, for instance, how do we restock?
So if you run ballistic ammunition, we will allow you to restock the ballistic ammunition. And the way that it will work is you will buy ammunition containers that then you will use to refill the pool of the ships that you either landed, or if you even have like a capital ship or a bigger ship, you will be able to put those boxes with the ammunition inside. Right now, it's a dedicated slot, but it's subject to change, and then it will basically drag the ammunition out of it, and then
Wait. I am so sorry. I got really into thinking about how rearming would work from the cargo grid and realized he's describing it. I need to go back because this is actually kind of a big answer happening right now.
Refueling and rearming. Rearming out in the field
actually pay attention.
Supposed to work. If we land our fighter in a Polaris, for instance, how do we restock?
So if you run ballistic ammunition, we will allow you to restock the ballistic ammunition. And the way that it will work is you will buy ammunition containers that then you will use to refill the pool of the ships that you either landed, or if you even have like a capital ship or a bigger ship, you will be able to put those boxes with the ammunition inside. Right now, it's a dedicated slot, but it's subject to change, and then it will basically drag the ammunition out of it, and then basically put it to the pool. One change that will.
Okay, I get a pause because Rycops just gave us 20 freaking members on YouTube, dude. What the hell? Just dropping 20 mems in the middle of this kind of an answer. Thank you. Much love for that. That's a big answer. That is a really important answer because I think that's the first time they've ever confirmed how ship to ship rearming will work. Don't think we've ever gotten that in actual words. And it's pretty straightforward. You have ammo boxes that get put in your ship in some place, and that reloads the ships on the ship and as well as the ship itself. Biggest thing that I'm thinking of for that, you're going to have to start thinking about how much cargo space you have on every single ship you have with ballistic guns. Like if you have a Redeemer, it's got a bunch of turrets on it. If you put a bunch of ballistic guns on that turret, you're going to have to consider where you're keeping all that extra ammo if you're going to be out for a while. Same goes for really anything else like that. Hammerhead, you got a lot of storage on Hammerhead, but like then you're combining all of that with the resources you need for food, for water, for your life support system, maybe extra fuses. Suddenly, the idea of having a ship without cargo space is starting to get a little bit crazy.
Come with that is that we will. So this is something that is coming sooner than later, which is we will unify the ammunition size, and that's just for the fact that we don't want to have you bespoke ammunition, for example, for your bearing Gatling, but we want you to share the ammunition between different weapons that share the same size of ammunition. For example, a size 3 Gatling uses the same round size as a size 2 repeater, and it uses the same size as a size 1 repeater, so you can plan your loadout accordingly if you just want to buy one type of ammunition for your ship.
And what about for things like bigger things like missiles and torpedoes?
Yeah, we already started with that, right? So the tractor beam detach attach was the first step already for that. So the following steps are then having these. I think I don't know if it was ever put out, the images of the. I might be leaking something now.
Leak something. Come on. Say it.
Like we had those missile racks, that the mobile missile racks that you could push into vehicles. So these might also see the light of day at some point.
Yeah. No, I don't remember if we've shown those.
I don't.
But that's been an idea.
I don't recall that. Mobile missile racks. You guys remember that? I don't remember that.
It's been floating around development long enough that we can share that. Basically, the idea of storing missile racks inside your vehicles that you can then, when the ship lands in something like the place, you basically go and reload and stuff like this. There's also, I have no idea if it's out yet or not, but Tyler will have a post on Spectrum later today concerning some of the weapons for the Retaliator and some of the missile counts for the Firebird. So I don't know what the details are specifically, but check that out. There's some improvements.
It's super freaking cool to be talking about rearming. Can we just take a little journey back? For those of you who don't want to, you can skip ahead. Let's just go on a little journey back to Star Citizen Live circa spring of 2021. There was an episode of Star Citizen Live, or whatever we were calling it back then, that they had on quite a few people from the teams that were working on this kind of stuff, refueling, repair, and salvaging, the more industrial heavy hitters. People were really excited for it. It was a great talk. They talked a lot about the design of how this all worked, but they never got into the details. And that was a while ago. Thank God we've actually made the progress that we have to get to this point, but it's so nice that we're hearing these same talks, but they actually have the details. Like they actually have things that they can say rather than just, oh, well, maybe you can kind of do this or we might do that. Like he came out and just gave the answer. And for something like rearming one ship from inside of another, that's important for a lot of different reasons. It's just good detail here.
It's coming in a 3.23.1a patch or 2. Again, the specifics elude me right now, but I know that the Firebird is getting more missiles than it currently has, and the Retaliator is getting bigger guns, I think. So look out for that. If that hasn't posted on Spectrum yet, it'll post later. And then trust him for the details, not me. Are we likely to see missions for refueling?
Yeah, it's something we want to do, but it's not a simple thing to do. There's a lot of like downstream dependencies that we have to rely on for it, and there's a lot of edge cases. You know, if we're doing refueling and then you board the ship and kill the AI pilot and you've just got a free ship because you sat there like without any fuel. These are sort of things we need to catch and protect against. We also need like a crazy amount of feedback for the player so that that they're like, right, I'm nearly full, or hey, I need some help, or maybe we do like, hey, here's the first version, it's just refueling, but then we have refueling, but you get pirated by some AI pirates. The AI needs to be able to react and communicate with you as the player and sort of like tell you about the situation that's currently happening so you can sort of adapt appropriately. So long story short, yes, just probably not yet because we need a few more things.
In other words, somebody else needs to build this stuff so I can put it in these missions.
What'd you do to Araka? Araka in chat says, please don't let this guy do missions. He got timed out by Knight Rider, but...
Go on, Knight Rider.
You making friends out there, Elliot?
Always. Everyone loves me.
While we're sitting here talking about missions, let's talk about mining missions. So refueling, obviously...
I don't think they're saying that they need us to not kill the AI and take the ships, but they need the game to be able to respond to that happening. Like right now, you can just do that and nothing really happens. There's no reputation loss or stuff like that. At least not if you're... I guess if you're in comm status, then you would get in trouble for stealing it and taking the ship. But yeah, I guess there's already kind of consequence for it. It just sucks. So I don't know why it would be a problem.
We want to do and stuff. But what about missions related to mining? Wow, the ability to speak. There it is. What about mining missions?
Mining missions, yes. I mean, yeah, we want them, and we're gonna have our first versions of them coming in hopefully soon, in the form of resource gathering. But these are going to be the first iteration, which we kind of call like open resource gathering. And this is the idea that like a mining outpost will go, I want 1,000 SCU of iron, and then that's all they say, and then you have to go out and collect it, or I want 1,000 SCU of quantanium, and you as a player can go mine it and transport it, or if you could purchase it from another player or a store, you do that, or you can pirate people for it.
See, and those missions should be coming from the idea that those outposts or like factories, distribution centers, actually want to need those resources to continue to do whatever it is they're doing, the whole quantum system,
and bring it in because they don't care where you've got.
Which I've heard it comes up at some point.
That resource. So that'll be kind of like the idea of the first versions, and then later down the line we might get more specific with sort of resources that we want, where we're like, we want exactly this, these mining things from this area because we have bought the sort of land claim there for those rocks.
And then there's all that talk about, we've talked before about how the mission system could potentially plug into like a quantum and stuff, and when a resource is needed, for a
So I missed that.
For about, and then there's all that talk about, we've talked before about how the mission system could potentially plug into like a quantum and stuff, and when a resource is needed, for a particular station or something, it could generate a mission, for that stuff.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is this is it's static because we have to pre-set up all of the data, but the idea is that it's all there. So when the sort of quanta star sim, whatever it's called, system comes and hooks in, it'll just take over and start generating these on its own and balancing these based on like the needs of the universe, and you know, it will react to what players are doing.
And that's not to say that
Like it's like whatever the it is.
missions are the only way. Like when these missions come online and stuff, and as there are more salvage missions and more mining missions, that's not the only way to make a living with those professions. That's just those are introductory things to draw people to the profession for the first time that maybe they hadn't considered before, and to supplement a little more directed initiatives to just the open sandbox stuff that you'll always be able to do.
Yeah, it's something that me and Thorsten have talked about a few times when it came to when Thorsten first released salvaging, you know, hull scraping. The gameplay came out, and then the missions were a way to help expose it to new people so they could see the gameplay and find the things a bit quicker. So it's a nice way to sort of show you to the world, and then let the systemic nature of the universe and let the, you know, the actual cost of doing it yourself without a mission come into play when you get more advanced at it.
Yeah, that's exactly how it should be, right? Every level of mission at a different reputation should be a tutorial for new parts of that gameplay, so that you can go and do that beginning sandbox gameplay, but you either have to go out and learn it on your own from like new players or orgs or something like that to figure out the deeper stuff, or you progress through that reputation, get those missions, and the game teaches you on the spot. Not like an actual tutorial, but they put you in the situation where you have to learn the stuff they want you to know there. I love that idea for missions in every category. Good stuff.
I'm going to do one more mission question since we just happen to be on here. Are there plans for more robust missions that cross disciplines? For instance, in here it says it starts off as a mining job, then turns into a repair job, so that you can then do a salvage job and then transport this, whatever, yada yada yada. Kind of. I guess the Overdrive was the first kind of beginnings of that multidiscipline kind of stuff.
Yeah, we definitely want multidiscipline things. What we're doing is we're building, because obviously, as I might have mentioned a few times, I build missions modularly. So we build a load of base sort of modules. So with our resource gathering and our salvage things, the idea is that when we get enough of them, we'll start stitching bits of them together. So you might have a mission where you've got to take out a bounty, and then you've got to hull scrape him, and then maybe you've got to steal his component. Then you've got to, like, someone wants that component, so you get another objective, like deliver that component to this person. And we plan to have missions that take you through multiple bits of gameplay, but all in one mission. But right now our focus is...
That's what we were talking about. What was that, last week? I think we were looking at investigation missions when we were going over possible other additions for 4.0. Investigation missions, I'm going to rewind this to go back over that. Investigation missions are something he's been working on. And somebody asked, these things are going to get old very quickly. How are these going to be interesting? And that's what he's explaining here, is basically these are being built in modules, so they could be combined in different scenarios with different factions on different planets to give you a different experience with maybe a similar kind of mission, but with, you know, different variables and stuff. And investigation missions, I think, are going to be a big part of one of those mission chains.
Yeah, we definitely want multidiscipline things. What we're doing is we're building, because obviously, as I might have mentioned a few times, I build missions modularly. So we build a load of base sort of modules. So with our resource gathering and our salvage things, the idea is that when we get enough of them, we'll start stitching bits of them together. So you might have a mission where you've got to take out a bounty, and then you've got to hull scrape him, and then maybe you've got to steal his component. Then you've got to, like, someone wants that component, so you get another objective, like deliver that component to this person. And we plan to have missions that take you through multiple bits of gameplay, but all in one mission. But right now our focus is creating the baseline of all sort of generic type missions that we can think of. So
no, I don't think it's like the Radiant system necessarily, although I think that's more Quantum. What Quantum is kind of like. This is more just describing the fact that the missions they're building out are able to be mixed and matched with different variables, which I think is pretty common in the industry. They just have a lot of variables to mess with in this game.
Content before we start building into our bespoke sort of things.
Okay.
So yeah, that's also another key point. they've only started talking about narrative stuff over the last year or so, because the narrative team has been doing a lot of stuff for Squadron and is now moving on to Star Citizen more. So the actual missions we play, it sounds like they're starting to get into the position of doing missions like we'd think of, with an actual story or with real voice acting, or just more of a plot than, hey, this pirate is out at a derelict ship, you better go kill him. These are like, they've basically just been testing these modules for all this time. And the way they've been starting to talk about missions, it sounds like over the next maybe year and a half, we're going to start to see more narrative come into them. I hope.
And while we're still talking profession stuff, Torsten, maybe. Any thoughts about making power plants burn fuel? With abandoned ships keeping their shields forever, this would be a nice way to address that for salvaging and the like.
Yes, power plants will consume fuel in the future. So it's not
Nice.
So it has been a plan for quite some time already, and we are now looking into when is the perfect time actually to release it. It's not with 4.0, so it's not with the initial release of the resource network, but it will come at a later point then. And the goal there is then that the power plants will consume hydrogen fuel. So it's used for the thrusters and the power plants. And the reason is because power generators right now create energy out of thin air, and especially when we go forward to base building, we can't do that anymore. So we need a resource that is actually.
We're talking about actual resource balancing. Thank God.
The benefit is then in that scenario that is described in that question is once your fuel runs out, once your battery is depleted, all the systems on that ship will then slowly die, and you will be able to enter that ship without any shields anymore, but also without any life support.
Nice. Okay. Let's move on to combat.
Ugh.
We have quite a few combat-related questions here.
God. We've been doing combat for 7 years.
I'll just start off with the big one. In addition to the opening, we'll often take a bunch of questions and just combine them and stuff. This was really about 7 different questions I'm going to combine into one here. Is balance possible? Like you mentioned 140 ship records.
Can you fix this?
For master modes. Is this a pipe dream? Is balance actually an attainable thing?
It's not a pipe dream at all. So yes, we had 140 records, and we did a very quick weapon tuning pass and a little bit of a health pass for some components and ships, but we're also getting a huge amount of data from the players actually playing that stuff. Internally, when we develop stuff, it's sometimes hard to judge whether or not we reach the right balance, because we have a vast array of ships and items and all that. But when you watch player playing it, then you get an idea what's happening. That said, as I said, like the current pass that we have on the balance should not be treated as this is now the final product thing. It's really just a stepping stone, because it just sets a little bit the stage for the vastly bigger changes that are coming to in terms of like to 4.0 and beyond, because there will be new gameplay loops and so on.
I think a huge step we took right now is actually that we set our intentions very straight, right? So we know exactly what we want to achieve, and now we actually look for the data sets inside, like what players are actually experiencing right now, and we use these observations to improve the balance even more.
What you got, Rich?
Okay.
Yeah, on the overall question, is balance even possible? Do we want balance? As in, do we want everything to be balanced? Because the kind of nature of balance is the imbalance. That makes sense for me. Because we've got to capture all the unique characteristics of the ships, and that throws them off in all different kind of different kind of directions. And we've got to capture that balance to make sure that within the game context, the ship fits within the game, but every ship needs to feel different and offer different things and have different character to them. So that's kind of the complex nature of balance. And then we have to balance the game with the other features that affect flight. So basically, as Jürgen said, this is the starting point of the rebalance of the game. But then, with 4.0, it's going to evolve massively. With the engineering gameplay, it's going to have a significant impact on how the ships are in the game. So we're going to kind of reset again there, and then we're going to look at the data to see if we're delivering the gameplay we intend. So it's a juggling act, and it doesn't really ever end with a game like Star Citizen, because the game, it's a live product. It's out there, it's evolving, we're adding features, we're changing things all the time. So, from my side, the balance is, it's not something that will ever be finished. It's an evolving thing. It's a living, breathing thing.
I don't think that this game is ever going to reach a relatively balanced state, at least for a pretty long time. Anybody who's expecting this to make a lot of sense over a long period of time is going to be waiting a while. I think that we'll have pockets of things making sense, but like right now we're getting engineering. In a year we might get Maelstrom or the armor system. Next year maybe like life support and the fire hazard causes problems. E-War gets an update and suddenly like that ends up making things weird again. I can't even imagine how they could try and consider balancing the ships right now with so much stuff in flux.
Exists in the game currently and will carry on to evolve, and
which is true for any MMO, any online game, right?
Yeah.
We were talking. I won't begin to try to pronounce his name. The main guy in charge of Smash had an interview this week or last week where he said he talked about their internal numbers about how the most successful fighter in all of Smash Brothers had like a 51% win rate, and the least successful fighter had a 46% win rate. So it was really only about a 5% difference there. And Torsten, you mentioned that he had a YouTube channel where he talks about design and stuff.
Yeah, it's basically he talked about like if you have a fully balanced game, it's basically everything is average, and average is boring generally. So you always tend to do, if you do balancing, there's always a peak up or a peak down. So it's more interesting for players.
Yeah.
Worth watching, by the way.
Yeah, it was like the best characters were 51, the worst characters were 45. Elliot Maltby was like 38.
Swear to God, you can't even pronounce his name. Come on. This guy built my childhood.
But yeah, so I think the moral of that story is Elliot is bad, and balance is an ongoing thing that never ends, but you never want to make it too homogenous. There will always be some level of intentional imbalance, because like life, that's what makes it enjoyable and interesting. We couldn't talk much about the Bounty Hunting V2 thing.
As long as the balance leads to the Terrapin being on top, I agree.
A lot of that's ship related has to do with non-lethal damage. So let's talk about non-lethal damage. Can you give us an update on things like EMP, distortion, and overall ship disabling? Anything involved in not destroying another ship?
Torsten, maybe you take that, because that's highly related to resource network. So
I thought you wanted to talk about like EMP and stuff, but okay.
no, I mean, it's like it's similar. So the big question, the big picture hasn't really changed, but there will be some specific details with like software that Torsten will talk about in 2 seconds. Now.
Yeah, so we still keep all the weapon counters, that is distortion, that is EMP and stuff like that, where you can deactivate a ship. But like for EMP, you first have to bring the shield down, so there's some work that comes with it in front. For distortion, we already mentioned it. I think it's on the roadmap now with a multi-tool that you will be able to counter distortion. So
Pretty cool.
That's something that we were missing before, that distortion damage has actually a valid counter. So you are not only a sitting duck when you get fully distorted by someone else. You will be able to drain that, so you will be able to make your ship work again.
See, and I feel even that is something that you need to consider in a conversation about balance, right? Like if your ship can have people on board it, then that has to be considered in a fight against a ship that can't, because those people on board can reduce distortion damage. How do you factor that in?
The biggest change that will come with 4.0 is the change to soft death. I don't know if all of you already played the Arena Commander experimental mode, but that already gives a hint at what we are aiming for. So right now, also in 3.23 live, also in 3.23.1 live, if you shoot a ship, if the ship reaches health 0, it will explode or it will go into the soft date state. Yeah, we are right now actively discussing how we want to change that. So we have already some ideas. One of the big ideas is tied actually to the health or the life of the power plant, and yeah, give also players a way to maybe fix or escape the soft death scenario there. This is
Repair.
as said, still an active discussion, but the goal is to have it come with everything resource network related for 4.0.
Okay.
And of course,
I was gonna say this is starting to go back to what I was talking about before. Older conversations of like we would like to, we want to, but he's still talking next update here with this conversation. So saved it there.
we talked about this in ISC, but the experimental modes for this season in Arena Commander have to do with, you know, tuning time to kill and stuff on a lot of these ships.
Yeah, correct. Yes. Yeah, it's a huge effort right now that we are going through, which is like, I don't know if we had heavy iterations time, especially in the beginning of the 3.23 cycle, where we had it wrong, had it even more wrong, and then at some point we were heading into a direction we were seeing suddenly the time to kill times being in the ballpark area of where we want to see them. We are still not fully there yet, so we are still improving it, especially like it gets really complicated because some ships are in some ships it's easier to destroy crucial components versus others, but yeah, we are working on a solution for that.
Again, balance. That's also something you have to consider.
Sorry, I got somebody in chat. Suburbanite 1001 says, "I've lost all excitement for this game just about a decade ago."
What?
He's still here.
A decade ago?
Thanks for hanging in there, Suburbanite. Just. Listen, more. Okay, so here's a question, Elliot. Would you please make a clear distinction between vehicle-based combat missions and FPS ones? Is that something we even want to do? Do we want to mix them up? They're asking for it.
No, I won't. No, I'm joking. We're gonna add in the future when we redo the contract manager app. We're gonna add a sort of section where you can see the sort of gameplay you're going to encounter. So it'd say things like, maybe you need a multi-tool. Maybe you're gonna come up against. Maybe you're gonna need like FPS weapons. Maybe you're gonna need a powerful ship. There'll be like a
Dang, we were just talking about this in InfoRunners the other day when we were talking about, what was it? Was it Anvil Day? I believe we were talking about Anvil Day, and we were just talking about this idea of like, how much specific information would you want about what a mission? Actually, we were talking about this on the podcast today in Launch Sequence. How much specific information would you want regarding what you need for a mission? And I was thinking to myself, I don't, like, if I'm going to get a cargo mission, I want them to tell me what I'm dealing with. Am I dealing with cargo that needs refrigeration? Is it going to be 32 SCU boxes that are going to be really heavy and I need a bigger tractor beam? Is this going to an atmospheric location? I don't want them to tell me specifically, you need large tractor beams. You need VTOL thrusters. You need at least a crew size of 3. I hope they give us the contextual hints without just straight up telling us exactly what we need for every mission. Because that would be, that doesn't make it as fun to go into the mission. I think that would automatically start to guide me in a way of taking on the mission that I wouldn't really want to preempt me, if that makes any sense.
Like FPS weapons. Maybe you're going to need a powerful ship. There'll be like a a section where you can see what it is. And the reason that we don't currently make a distinction between the two is because the idea is that in the future, like your bounty that you're hunting might be above like a bunker, but then he might land and go inside, and then you've got to infiltrate and fight them. There's a whole bunch of different things that we want to happen. So therefore, we don't want to make a clear distinction when there might be why there might be none. You know, you might get there, start attacking them, and then they get in their ship and take off, and you've got to transition from ground to space-based combat. You know, there's
too
always
clear
a potential for change.
We don't want to make too clear a distinction.
Yeah, exactly.
I like what you're saying. It's like we could give you expectations. The mission giver expects it to be primarily this or primarily that, but I think it's important to leave room for the element of surprise, not
Definitely.
just from the story of your mission team and the narrative and stuff, but the surprises of the other backers, the other players in the verse.
Exactly. It takes like influence from real life. You know, you take a job and they're like, hey, this is what you're applying for. You're only going to do this. And 90% of the time you start and you're like, they give you so much other shit to do at the same time. So
no, I think that's good. I think that's a reasonable expectation, and I think it'll help people a lot. You know, we expect it to be primarily this. Why nerf a call to arms payout when it was already so meager? Which mission is call to arms? What am I?
It's internally it's called Sandbox Criminal Kills. It's the one that just gives you money for killing people with crime stats.
Right. Okay.
Players seem to always just want money. So I know, right? We are reactive. We try to be reactive with missions. So we look at them and we see if they're earning too much and they're, earning way too much than we like. We, take it back a bit. But now we have the economy team. They're actually helping with this. So they've actually rebalanced this again. So hopefully for the next patch, you'll see a change in the call to arms payment, because before call to arms was literally balanced by the mission team. And balancing UEC for our economy, obviously the reason we have a dedicated team is because it's so big. Like a funny example, kind of funny, one of the big reasons that we had to wipe UEC is because of my team, and I'll take sole blame because I submitted it. I accidentally managed to make it so that people had earned 4 billion UEC just from salvage missions. And the economy team, when they found out, wasn't very happy with me. But that's because numbers are absolute insanity to try and balance. So.
It's his fault. This is why the person in chat earlier said they didn't want to make the missions. They knew. They knew.
Fierce Sleep and several people in chat are like, did you just ask what is call to arms? Yeah, sometimes when I'm on live internet and there's a bunch of lights and constantly running 5 different calculations on how not to say the wrong thing because people will take it to Reddit, sometimes I say the wrong thing and I forget what a thing is called.
This just in, Jared doesn't play the game, doesn't know what call to arms is. Get him! Get him! Nah, he's just a non-combat player.
All right, Yogi.
Ha.
You knew this was coming. How's Master Modes going? And what happens next?
Bro, what? Didn't we talk about Master Modes? God, how are we back? How are we back to Master Modes? What?
There be changes?
Oh, changes, yes.
Dude, I can't.
I mean, the how is it doing right now? It's better than what we had in live on 3.2 before. In terms of like how successful the change was so far, I think it's pretty positive. I can't exactly say exact numbers, but the relationships of kill-death ratios on all ships, for example, they have flattened out a lot. A lot of the times in the past, we always had 1 or 2 ships which basically were responsible for most of the kills in the game, and that's not the case anymore. We also have more players with, let's say, more diverse levels of flying and combat skills enjoying the game more. So I would count that as a win. But there is a huge amount of stuff that is on our list to do. There's like typical examples like ESP needs to be improved. The 1v1 dogfighting needs to be improved. There's also a couple of things we want to try out with the flight model, like using an egg-shaped velocity space to.
What is he looking at? He's looking back and forth a lot.
strafing problem. Whether that works or not, we'll
Yogi, if you're being forced to say this, blink.
see. There's in general, we want to improve the combat distances a bit. There will be more stuff
He
happening
blinked.
with the 4.0 tuning patch concerning weapon speeds that also might help with the distances. And there's a couple of bugs like the camera shaking sometimes is inconsistent. The G4 zoom effects are sometimes inconsistent. And of course, there are like a couple of ships that feel out of whack. The one of the Hornets can at the moment pull 35 Gs upwards. That is, of course, not intended. So yeah, there's lots of stuff.
Oh my God,
as I said,
please,
like, it's
please.
overall-
Oh, YouTube chat. I can't. I'm watching this conversation. Please don't compare Star Citizen ships to NFTs. Let's not go down that path. Let's YouTube. Come on, y'all.
I'm pretty happy with the current progress. Is it the final state? Of course not. But there will be more stuff happening, especially with the resource network that will come towards, because of course these new feature sets also require some changes in the flight model or the way we target certain parts of the ships.
How about you, Rich?
Yeah, I said, I can echo, kind of Yogi's comments that, we're personally really happy with how it's gone. There's definitely going to be more changes. A big challenge with Masterwords for us in terms of release was just how much around Masterwords changed. So it wasn't just adding Masterwords to the game. This was fundamentally, making some big changes to the aiming system and the, kind of flight model itself as well. So we had a lot of changes going in that went just to Masterwords. This was quite hard to manage. But that's part of the fun. That's part of the fun in games working on this is, we're always trying to improve things, always trying to change things for the better. And, we're going to carry on listening to the feedback from the players, and also looking at the data as well, because that's a big part for us is we need to back up what, we basically need to be accountable for what we're doing. So, any changes we make, we've got to be able to prove them that they're actually having the impact in the game that, that we intended. So that's going to be a big part of moving forward with general balance. But yeah, there's going to be lots more.
How?
Yeah, there's going to be
How do they prove
we're going
that?
to fix up some of the ships because we definitely missed some of the ships. For various reasons. We changed a lot of ships, and there's some ships that inherit certain records from other ships. Sometimes that can catch us out a little bit. But we're basically working on identifying those ships, which we are in the process of doing, and we'll fix those up. And then we'll move towards 4.0 as well, where we basically expect, another round of big changes to the balance as well.
So like
Again,
any other feature,
why like expecting things to be normal? We just had a big round of changes, and we're going to have another big round of balancing changes in the next update. We don't usually go through that.
obviously since the PU first opened up in 2.0 back in December 2015, we're now in 2024. Obviously, there's not a single thing that's gone in that hasn't changed, that hasn't evolved, that hasn't continued to iterate since its first release. Master Modes is no different. It will continue to evolve, it'll continue to iterate, they'll continue to look at your feedback and process your feedback and apply where they think it's necessary and relevant and proper. And of course, fixing all the bugs and stuff like that. Speaking of bugs, chat has been asking about the dupe bug. Yes, the dupe bug is super duper annoying. All I can tell you right now, because I'm sitting here live doing a show and I'm not plugged into everything else at the moment, is that we have a fix internally. It's working on internal builds, and that fix will go out in a point patch. I don't know if it'll be 0.3 or it'll be a 0.2 B or whatever. Like they're still working that out, how that's going to be distributed. But we have a fix. It's working internally, and it will go out as soon as everything aligns to allow it to work out. As far as anything else around that, I know there's a bunch of subsequent questions. I don't have the answers for those ones, so hang tight. It's coming. Looking at these questions here. Racing. Does racing have any future? That's what the question.
I would say yes.
Of course. Yeah.
Why did they pick that question? Like, I mean, maybe there were no other questions about racing and they want to give an update on it, but like that's such an open-ended question. Yeah.
Of course, it has a future. Well, sure. There's like, I mean,
We gotta
Truly
sound more
master-
confident, guys. Come on.
No,
Yeah,
okay,
racing's
fine.
got a
Yes,
future.
racing,
Wow.
racing has a future. But really, it's about. I mean, like the master mode tuning patch. Of course, affected the current racing tracks that there are, right? Like the speeds got a lot slower and so on. And so some of the tracks we have right now, they might not work as they do now. But the level design team, for example, they also asked, hey, should we adapt the racing tracks now? And we were like, we're not completely done with our master mode change or with the flight model development. So maybe hold off for like doing extensive changes for a while. But racing, like, I mean, we sell racing ships. So of course we invested into racing. Actually, one of the specifically for the racing from the racing community, we added something to the flight model back then that was addressing the lack of certain acceleration when you're not using digital input devices and so on, right? So yes, racing is important, and we're not. Oh Jesus, what the hell? So racing is really important to us. And actually, today I got a question from Knebel, who's one of the German podcasters, YouTube streamers. Actually, don't know. He asked if we could add smoke pods to racing ships. I have not discussed it with anyone, but I think the idea is really, really great. Just putting this out there. Rich, say more about racing.
Is he galvanizing the community to put pressure on CIG to do that? Is that what you're doing? Are you weaponizing us, Yogi?
Definitely got a future, because I come from a racing background. I've done a lot of sim racing, and I'm a big fan of racing in real life. So, and that's the key thing with Masterwords is it's going to allow us in the future to kind of give more freedom to allow the racing variants to excel at racing, and that's something we're really keen for. Because one of the issues we've had in the past is it's balancing the combat experience with the flight experience and the racing experience. And if you have a really good racing ship that can use all its guns at the same time and everything, it can suddenly be the dominant force in combat, which is probably not intentional. So we're looking at ways where we can balance that, so we can have racing ships be like the best handling ships or the fastest in a straight line, and then basically, as Yogi said, it's about the tracks as well, because the tracks are where you're racing. So it's important that they're designed around the current flight model, and as we've made a lot of changes, we need to now take a step back and look at what tracks are going to make the most out of the handling that we now have in the game.
Yeah, they're in a rough place with the amount of big changes we're doing right now. These are the kinds of changes that I bet they would have wanted to see back in like 2020, because it's going to take years to just get all the game updated with all of this stuff, man. Engineering, master modes, server meshing. They got a full plate. They eating good. Well, we'll be eating good. It's going to be rough. Thank you, CIG. But it's going to be rough.
Starbucksy in chat says, Jared, is this live? Unfortunately. No, I think it's always good to remind people racing is super important. There's a lot of folks here. I know, Rich, you had a question whether you could even make this show because you were going to head off to a race this weekend and stuff, and you didn't know if you could be here and stuff. I mean, so many people on the vehicle team and just development in general are so big into racing and stuff. I think it's very close to a lot of our hearts.
I think the thing about not taking the weapons off of racing ships is kind of part of the sim environment of like all of these ships can put weapons on them. It's up to you to decide whether or not they should be there. Like the whole choice scenario, it's why you have weapons on like mining ships and stuff too. They could just remove the weapons, but I feel like that's a little bit of a cop-out when it comes to keeping ships having a lot of options. And, I realize that saying that in the same discussion, because I know it's going to come up as master modes, is obviously that is we acknowledge that is something that they're doing and they're putting through because they couldn't figure out how to do it in a more natural, organic, sim-like way. But I do think that they can when it comes to weapons and whether weapons are powered on or off, whether they're slowing your ship down, like somebody said, applying drag to your ship because of the weight, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think that would be cool to do it like that. We are live, Shoki. Craziness. Absolutely wild. Live watching live. Well, this isn't live anymore, but you get it.
just to sum back up, there's we got to figure out the master mode stuff before we spend a whole lot of time doing it. But I would not bet on I don't know what was I trying to say. I would just bet that there's enough people here who like racing and enjoy racing and love racing that it's time in the development sun, when the development Eye of Sauron, will return to it, that it'll get a lot of love and attention.
Racing got a lot of love over the last couple of years.
Speaking for myself, and Yogi, you might know where I'm going with this. I still hope for a racing master mode personally.
Well, I think the easiest, I wouldn't go for racing master mode, because racing, if you want to go quickly from A to B, this is what navigation mode is for, right? But we should absolutely do something like a racing operator mode, where the head-up display clears with racing specific information. We actually have a stopwatch on the HUD. I'm not sure if players know about this, but this is, for example, something that we should then just have on by default, or having a bigger, I don't know, like a bigger TVI and giving you expected deceleration times directly into view, and stuff like that. That's stuff that's important for the racing experience itself.
Well, that's why I'm not a designer and a programmer.
There's
What I like.
on the mission side for racing. Also, real quick, I'd like to point out, Rich is being incredibly modest. Rich, aren't you like a champion iRacer? Like
it was a long time ago.
Back in my day.
there you go. Yeah, a champion iRacer. So there you go. For missions, we're in the PU. It can be a bit difficult to do racing missions compared to AC, because we have the respawn flow set out for us, so it can take you quite a long time to get back to the racetrack where you want to do your races. So we're investigating ways we can speed that up. I don't want to speak to any specifics because they might change. One thing we are doing is we're going to be adding open track versions of the current racing missions that we have. Because currently how you unlock the next racetrack is via completing the first one. So what we're going to do is just give out you don't get a reward, you don't pay a buy-in, here's access to the track. We'll time you like we do in the mission as it is, but it's just so you can keep practicing. And then going forward, we'll have more advanced races, but races aren't just in ships, they're in ground vehicles. We have the Daymar Rally.
EVA races, please.
That the community do, and that's a lot of fun, but they can also extend to on foot races. And recently we prototyped a race, time trial race in the escape route of the prison, where we time players who could get out the fastest and then award them like merits for whoever got out the fastest.
That's awesome.
We didn't feel like it fully fit, so we've just kind of like, we can do it, and maybe in the future you'll see it somewhere in the game. But yeah, it was a lot of fun because we tried to be sort of suggestive with the direction. So if you didn't know the escape route, you could really mess your time up.
I do. Well, you mentioned the Daymar Rally. I think that's as good a transition as any to
ground vehicles.
Favorite topics. Ground vehicles.
Hover bikes. Oof.
You ready, Rich?
Oh boy.
Always. I love ground vehicles.
Why do the tanks suck?
Well, unfortunately, this is one of the problems with changing so much. Is we got caught out by a change on the back end of the game, and this had a negative impact on the tank handling, and we just couldn't quite get it fixed in time for the release. It was quite a complicated problem. It's quite an interesting problem as well. I'm not going to go too much into the details, but I can confirm it is now fixed, and the tank is now well, both tanks are driving like tanks again, which is really good.
The tanks are fixed internally, not publicly.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, we've discovered the error, we fixed it. It's gone into our builds, and that'll make its way out there.
All right. So what's with all the other wheeled vehicles that are sliding and sometimes bouncing around all the time? My poor
and
Game
floating.
Guys, we're trying to film the Ursa Medevac for ISC, and they're like, is it supposed to have like hydraulic bounce?
Yeah, unfortunately, that was another change that wasn't really caught in time to fix, but it has, it's also been fixed. So
I feel like I've heard, man, dude,
I'm
so tired of talking about ground vehicles being fixed and not being fixed. It's been so many years of us having ground vehicles, using them everywhere, and needing them for things and them being absolutely f***ing terrible. Like they flip over, they kind of float on their sides, they'll hit a rock and then do a headstand and sit there for 5 minutes, and you're like, it's 1G gravity. I'm not on a moon. Man. Ground vehicles and hovercrafts are really annoying to use, but I want to use them more.
As a player, was actually the server vehicle and not the actual player vehicle of the player physics. So it caused a lot of glitching, but we've corrected that, and the ground vehicles are now back to being fairly stable ground vehicles. And it's fair to say, we're still looking at improving the general ground vehicle experience to make it as good as ships, because it should be. They're all vehicles in the game, and all vehicles should be up to the same
They
standard.
feel so light, ground vehicles. And yeah, the speed limiter, like not being able to choose your speed, it's all just a really rough experience.
We're definitely looking at improving the ground vehicle experience still. But we're pretty happy with the kind of major physics overhaul that went through with it. We just need to make it a little bit more game friendly, for our environments, which are massive planets with loads of different terrains.
I get you. Loading in chat says, Jared, I beg you, do you have any plans for the cluttered UI problem? These aren't the UI guys, Loading, but yes. We was witnessing a big chat with Simon and Bone and CR just yesterday in our big creative and technical directors chat and stuff. We're aware. It's been a forever thing.
What's the clutter?
I have no information to give you. That was just them talking about potential solutions yesterday, so I don't know where they're going with it. But yes, but these aren't the guys.
Wait, what's the cluttered UI? Is there something specific, like a glitch or something? Oh, name tags. Huh. Name tags blocking out everything. I see. As a workaround for that, if you don't want all the name tags on your screen, you can limit the distance at which name tags pop up. So like you can put it to only make them pop up within 10,000 kilometers or something. That way you won't have names everywhere if you're in a big party and they're all across the system.
What happened to GravLibs recently? This question says that they've fallen into a bad state that they had previously before their last rework, where sometimes they just decide to stop hovering, fall down, and explode.
Or just fly forever.
This one, we're not quite sure. It's actually, we got reports about this like midweek, and we started to do our own investigations across different teams to figure out what's going on. Because we've changed some of the stuff in the handling, but the back-end technology hasn't changed. But again, with a game like Star Citizen, the fundamental game engine is updating all the time, and there can be kind of negative consequences on completely different features because it might use a piece of some of the game part which works a certain way, which now works a different way, and that can have an impact. So it's about figuring out where it's gone wrong, because we're definitely not happy with the overall kind of GravLife experience, and we're definitely looking at improving it. Because that's another key part of racing as well. Because the GravLife racing can actually be really cool. When it works really well, it's probably one of the cooler race experiences in the game. So we're definitely looking at what's gone wrong in 3.23 for GravLife.
Yeah, the chat's talking about how basically sometimes it flips over and you hit your head on the ground and falls down and stuff. So it's, like I said, we're looking.
My problem is you launch off a hill with a hover bike and you just kind of float there in the air for such a long time.
I imagine when we find something more, we'll communicate it. That said, I like this next question. Star Citizen is a lot of things. It's PvP, it's PvE, it's FPS, it's spaceships.
I just don't have friends. Yes.
It's sandbox. It's chain missions and stuff like this. Ground vehicles can sometimes seem like an afterthought, or just like an also ran. So this question simply says, what are you doing to encourage ground vehicle usage? Are there any specific new mission types for this, maybe?
So there's been lots of discussions about ground vehicles in our game and how we use them on the mission side. The main thing we face is that when we balance a mission and balance the economy, time is a huge factor in it. And if you can do it in a ground vehicle, you can do it in a ship a hell of a lot faster. So it becomes this thing where we try to make an experience around ground vehicles, but then people just do it quicker in a ship. So then we have to lower the price to not break the economy, and then people just stop doing the mission. We want to add a benefit. We want to add a reason for people to actually use ground vehicles. Recently, like in the distribution centers, there's massive like gas spheres, and the ground turrets will shoot at spaceships, but they won't shoot at ground vehicles. So we've seen some players using the tonks to destroy them, so that they don't have as much resistance. But we also like we need some like tools or features that help us encourage it. A recent
Weather.
thing that we was investigating for ground vehicles was to do with the copions that just got added to the game. Was we was having a debate about how we discover them, how the player discovers them. And one of the sort of discussions that we came upon was that maybe the ground vehicle radar would be the only thing that could find these copions, so that if you wanted to do the mission, you'd have to land, take your ground vehicle out and use that to try and locate the copions. But we wasn't really happy with that, so we've kind of thrown it out. But yeah, we're always looking for new ways and how we can encourage it. And me and Thorsten have been talking about ways that we could do it. So I'll hand over to Thorsten because I'm sure he's got
I actually
some.
wanted to say, like, yeah, there's some
All right, but what about
things that we already started discussing, and that is, I think, one of the most important parts is that environment matter, right? So depending on what environment the mission takes place in, it might be worth bringing your ship or your ground vehicle, or even going by foot. So for example, we already have the case where you have to enter a cave and you cannot fly in. We have some where you can fly in, we have some where a ground vehicle also fits in, but in general, if you have a cave mission, the way to go into that cave is by foot. But we want to expand on that in the future, and we don't only want to expand on that by how the environment looks. So for example, a vast forest, you cannot land with your ship, but you can drive into it with your ground vehicle. But we also want to utilize
what the heck, Star Citizen?
the weather conditions, for example, right?
No,
So
I
a
don't want to
strong
play.
wind, for example, will block your ship from actually landing safely. So it's better to be outside of that strong wind area and drop the ground vehicle, and then avoid the strong wind by driving in with your ground vehicle. Or with Pyro, you might have already seen it in the CitizenCon demos with the solar flare. When your ship gets hit by a solar flare, it basically drops down because it's turned off. So this is also like the dropping from the sky is something that you would avoid when you would have come with a ground vehicle in that situation. But there are also other things that are related to the weather, like limited sight. It's better, or it's safer to go with a ground vehicle versus a spaceship and stuff like that. So there are plenty of scenarios that we are currently investigating what we can do to actually make ground vehicles more like usable. Or
See, now this sounds more like one of those old school answers I was talking about. This doesn't sound as planned or actually discussed as the other things that we've been talking about today. I feel like the best opportunities for this are things like crevices and caves. And maybe they're not talking about them because they're already in the game, but they could just continue to double down on underground gameplay. There's a lot they could do there, underground facilities and other things like that. Don't know why they're not mentioning that.
like even required for missions.
Cool. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left in the show. We might go a few minutes over because I want to talk about our last topic here, engineering. Obviously, engineering. Everybody's rightfully excited for 4.0, Pyro, and all that stuff, and you should be. For me, we've been talking about engineering so long. You know my feelings on engineering. That's where the birth of multi-crew stuff comes from. So that's my big thing. Before we get to these questions, let's revisit the scope. What should people expect from engineering in 4.0?
We should get to hear that.
So as of now, for 4.0, let's start with life support. So we will have life support that has the fire system in it. So life support is also a valid counter for fire that you will see on your ships. We will have room propagation, so
Nice.
you opening a door to the outside.
Holy crap, they've talked for such a long time about that. That's great to hear. The room system is something that was showing up on around the verse in like 2017, 2018.
Will basically evacuate all the atmosphere of your ship to the outside. We have atmosphere maintenance, where you as the player are responsible for making sure that your life support generator runs well enough so that there's enough breathable atmosphere inside the rooms. And yeah, as already said, so the life support generator is a new item that we will introduce, and the life support generator then will create a new resource that is so right now it's still called life support resource. Like, we are really creative with names. There's a filter that is also a new item that is added as the consumable for the life support generator. And yeah, that's just the life support segment of the resource network release. Talking about engineering, here we have the power management that will be introduced.
Ah,
We're
good.
not able to see it yet in the Arena Commander mode because we were not ready yet. So especially UI is still a lot of work on us that we need to
Calculator, Matt.
get it right. It needs to be accessible. It cannot be like this high scientific method of you basically measuring the joules that the power plant. No, we have to make it accessible for the general play audience, but still interesting for those that are really interested in those engineering mechanics. Then we will introduce the relays as the connection point between the items.
Basically the part we know about right
these
now.
are already things that you even see in live in some of the ships that are already prepared. So for example, the Retaliator already has the relay boxes with the fuses inside. And in the Arena Commander experimental mode, you can actually witness their functionality. A huge thing for it is, so that's more on our side. So on the design side is the rebalance of items again. So, but we as already mentioned, we have now, with all the pre-work that has been done for 323, we have a very clear goal of what we want to achieve here, and that is we want to really facilitate like the items inside a resource network. So items should be more meaningful in ships. So we have a meaningful difference between item classes, for example, where there's a huge difference on the look and feel in terms of gameplay for the civilian and military components, as well as the grades. So this is our internal high goal for the release, that we have a meaningful difference there, so that players' choice actually matters here. And also what we want to achieve here is that it's clearer, the differences, so players understand what's the difference between a civilian and an industrial item more easily. And it's
That's
very
great.
clear to players
I'm
what to
going to be really excited to finally get some care about components. I haven't cared about them for the longest time. I look forward to actually having some differentiation between them. I'm sure there has been, but like I said, I haven't noticed that much. And I feel like the balance that they're doing now with these kinds of things, like the weapons and the FPS stuff that we've been experiencing in 323, makes me a little bit more interested in actually digging into it more.
pick for the journey they want to take. Something that, sadly I had a discussion yesterday, will not make it for 4.0 so as of now is the batteries. So we might push the batteries to a later release. Doesn't mean that they won't come. It just means they come at a later point, because we want to, like, this is like, it's such a crucial feature and we need to get it right. And every time that we can spend on polish is better invested than actually forcing additional features in. So we rather would like to spend time in polishing the feature and then just making sure that everything is in. I think no one would like that.
Yeah, batteries, because batteries are going to be in weapons, they're going to be in vehicles, in ships, in outposts, in space stations. Batteries are probably going to be a pretty big feature compared to how they've covered them so far.
Not working, or it's not working well enough. That's the best safe phrasing I could come up with.
I hear you, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. Obviously, when ISC comes back in about a month, one of the stories we'll be telling on our journey to 4.0 will be another revisiting of engineering and life support and stuff like that, and you'll get to see how it's all, working laid out there. So,
Shall I continue? Because I'm not done.
okay.
Yes.
So there's more. There's more and that is a simple repair. So we have the repair of ship items that you also can already witness in the Arena Commander experimental mode, exchange of fuses, exchange of broken items. And we mentioned that at the beginning of this show that there's now a distortion counter, and that basically leads to the last bit that we will introduce with the resource network engineering gameplay, which is malfunctions. So here we will start with 3 malfunctions. So the initial release will come with those 3, which is a fire, damage to the item, and distortion to the item.
I wonder
Because
what about tuning? That's what we're still not hearing about.
Have dedicated counters to them so that we can actually introduce meaningful gameplay, and you're not like just suffering from whatever malfunction the item will suffer from. But we made sure that the malfunction system is so vast that if we notice that those 3 are not enough yet, that in the later patch or in later releases, we can add more bespoke malfunctions so we can slowly widen the gameplay, because I can tell you it's already quite a lot that you have to manage and learn. So it will be fun, but it will be also a huge learning curve that some of us have to go through.
Oh, cool. No, it sounds great.
Great.
Honestly, I'm so excited for engineering because of how deep it is in. I feel like there's going to be so much potential with this gameplay when it comes to the different ships we have access to. I talked to my community about the Tony Z stuff. We talked about that day one. Actually, I put out a post about that with my video. It was like maybe a day after my video came out. So we were very excited about that. It was cool.
I would like it known
Product placement with the mug. We don't hear about MISC very much right now.
through all these episodes this year and the previous years. I saw some folks giving me credit for asking hard questions or whatever. These people are willing to show up every week, and they're willing to take the hard questions and my dumb bullshit like I just did. And
It's my day off.
yeah. So it's just whatever praise you guys ever give to me, I pass it on through to the developers who appear on ISC and SCL. Especially, just Torsten was a great example of that, where it's like, no, I got more I want to share. And it's like, man, I love that shit. I love that. And yeah, this is my med pen. I tried to stow it, but it keeps reappearing in my hand. It's an old bug.
Torsten.
That's it, everybody. Thanks for watching our Invictus All Vehicles gameplay SCL. If you haven't checked it out, look at yesterday's ISC, where we revealed the brand new Iron Chad from Drake Interplanetary, and got a look inside the current gray box progress of the RSI Polaris. They're both really, really, really cool looking, and I'm really excited to get both of them in the game as soon as possible. We're on hiatus. So we're gonna take a few weeks off from ISC, a few weeks off of publishing. We'll be filming and recording and creating all the great stories for 4.0. We don't get any time off, and SCL will take next week off because I have a doctor's appointment on the same day. Health.
Get that doctor's appointment.
But we'll be back with the SCL in 2 weeks. Until then, thank you again to Torsten, to Elliot, to Rich, to Yogi, and of course to everybody who always appears on these shows. Like I said, can't do it without you. I think we're going to do a raid thing, because it's, they like to do the raid thing. So community folks, if you're
Hey, they
watching,
rated
start the
us.
raid thing.
That was us. They rated us yesterday.
I really like my job, and you guys make it possible. So thank you for that. And this is a cool med pen. I got a blue one too. Oxygen. And yes, chat was right. Why am I holding it? Because I look at Twitch chat and I need it to recover from the damage. Till next time, everybody.
Twitch chat, we love you. Interesting episode. There was some decent news in there. I'll have to watch this again just to remember it all. That's it for me though today. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for hanging out, checking this out, talking about some Star Citizen with me. I appreciate you all.